Hello and welcome back to the Nerd Theorists, and today, a little later than that we would have liked, I'm going to be going through the first 2 episodes of the new Doctor Who series with Shutigawa. So, roll the credits and let's go through my thoughts on it. Right, so for episode 1, which is called Space Babies. Now, I know a lot of Doctor Who fans have not really taken this first episode on board very well. It's not received a massively great response from what I've seen on social media. I'd love to know your thoughts down below, but I personally really enjoyed it. And I'm going to go through a few talking points about why I really liked it and a few things that I think are kind of foreshadowing of things to come. And also, because, I mean, yes, a lot of the first episode was very silly, and that's Doctor Who. It is silly. They have lots of really silly moments. It had lots of fun, lots of silliness, running, suspense, tension, and moments where you've just got to suspend your belief about how things could possibly work, and I'll kind of touch on a few of those points. So, I mean, like any new Doctor with a new companion, the Doctor introduces Ruby to the TARDIS, and in her first little trip, they go well back in time. Now, she makes a bit of a quip about using that old stereotype about the butterfly effect. Oh, what if I step on a butterfly? And despite the Doctor saying how unlikely it was that anyone would ever step on a butterfly, that's exactly what she did as soon as she steps out, and temporarily at least changes the timeline, or at the very least how human evolution would take place, or even not take place at all. So, and what kind of was kind of great about that, it was that how the Doctor looked so shocked, like he completely wasn't expecting anything possible to have happened, almost as though Ruby has an inexplicable ability to be able to change things, change fate or change destiny, because we've seen plenty of times the Doctor has mentioned these kind of unchangeable moments in time which cannot be changed for whatever reason.
Certain moments in time are fixed.
Now, if there was no human race, there would have been none of these major points. It's an interesting point to kind of raise, really. I mean, I'd love to know your thoughts on that as well, so let me know. But the Doctor being the Doctor, and we assume he used a little bit of his regenerative power to breathe life back into the butterfly and set the history of the human race back on course. That's just a small snippet, just the very beginning, and it's a great way to start off. Second trip, straight afterwards, rocketed into the future, where they land on a space station. It's effectively a baby farm run by space babies. Now, yes, it is very silly, and the lip syncing of the baby's mouth when talking was terrible. Let's not beat about the bush. It was terrible. But again, it's Doctor Who. It's a bit silly. If we're picking like how bad the effects are on that, you look at any old Doctor Who, the effects were atrocious. We didn't watch them for the effects. We watched them for the fun, the entertainment, the ability to wow us, and it did all of that. Personally, I thought it did. At least it's looking like this series is going to do all of those things and more. And I'll come back to that. So, also on the space station there is Nanny, which turns out to be one of the old crew before the rest of the crew had previously abandoned the space station. And also what is referred to as the boogeyman. And it turns out that this boogeyman is just literally that, is a monster made of bogies that the ship's AI has kind of created, because it thinks that that's what babies need, like a story and something to be brave about. But and all in all, the Doctor keeps touching on this whole concept of they're not evil, they're just someone no, they're not monsters, it's just a creature I've not met yet. And I like that. It's a nice way of kind of going about the way this particular new Doctor thinks. So when they actually do finally meet Nanny, and they explain about why the space station was abandoned by all the adults so long ago, or 6 years ago, that effectively it's humans way in the future on a different planet, and they effectively got to a point where they needed it through assumedly the populace had become sterile, so they create these baby farms, but then it made it illegal for these baby farms to be switched off, and also being very capitalist, they just went, we can't afford to run it anymore, so we're abandoning the space station, but it's illegal to switch it off, so we'll keep them running and we'll just abandon the babies up there regardless of what happens. It is a wonderful, wonderful jab at pro-lifers. It is a modern day kind of social commentary, and that I think a lot of people have missed when they watched this. You have to think of it like that, because Doctor Who has made so many wonderful jabs, or not necessarily always jabs, but they've made wonderful social commentaries about events in the past, and this is no exception, continuing on with the wonderful Doctor Who tradition of doing that. But in that same kind of time, whilst Nanny was explaining all of this, they did have some footage in the background of the old crew doing their final logs and signing off, saying they're leaving the station, and noting their discontent of leaving or abandoning these babies, or abandoning the space station. So yes, also the Ruby and the Doctor have this wonderful moment where they were talking about her birth and her birth mother, and when they abandoned her in the church in Ruby Road. And then it suddenly started snowing on the space station. The Doctor described it as a bit of the memory bleeding through, and again I think this is a hint towards the bit of hidden power within Ruby. Something's there which is that point of power. And he also actually mentioned that memory changed in that moment in time while they were discussing it. The memory changed because the mother turned round and pointed to the Doctor. This wonderful moment. And again, a wonderful bit of precursor as to what the interesting things, the storyline which is going to evolve around Ruby. And I think that's going to be a large part of this series to come. But in this episode, again with the boogeyman, Nanny does try to kill the boogeyman, or the bogeyman, as it were, and but the Doctor and Ruby have this wonderful moment. I keep saying wonderful a lot because it was wonderful. It was great. Where they explain how they have to save them all, because at the end of the day there's just another creature. The Doctor had this moment of realising that that's the only one of its kind just like he is. And that great moment of going, right, I need to save them. I need to save it. It doesn't matter if it looks like a monster. It's a creature. It's a creature that's in pain. It's hurting. I need to save it. Again, great way of showing how the Doctor feels. And so yeah, they did save them, and they figured out a way of transporting this space station across the solar system, whatever solar system they were in at the time. It's not our solar system, by using the built-up methane gas from all those 6 years' worth of nappies. And one really, really funny scene when they actually did vent all that methane and start propelling the space station across. When you see it, it really does look like this humongous arse in space, just letting rip and propelling it through space. It's absolutely brilliant. I had to rewatch that and rewind because it really does look like two massive butt cheeks. But yes, in the very, very ending, the Doctor gives Ruby a TARDIS key, which is very quick in my thought, but again, it's this Doctor, he knows what he's doing. Gives her a TARDIS key, and after she agrees to travel with him, it's on the condition that they will never go back to the church on Ruby Road to see her original birth mother, so that they cannot affect that point in time. The fact that the Doctor's already been there is also one point in that. But instead, they travel back to her family in the present day to spend Christmas together and introduce them to the Doctor. Well, the Doctor, knowing that something is up, just before he leaves the TARDIS in the end, sets a scan running to scan Ruby's DNA. He knows something up. Because there is. I'm looking forward to finding out what it is. So, on to episode 2. In this one, we have a new enemy. At least it was new to me. I don't believe we've seen the Maestro before. But the Maestro in this appears as one of the Pantheon. And if you're not aware of the Pantheon, it's a group of extraplanar or extra-dimensional beings, of which the Toymaker was one. And throughout this episode, the Maestro was revealed to be one of, not one of, but actually a child of the Toymaker. Which, I mean, obviously, as being a being, they assumed they could have children, but the thought had never even occurred to me. So that is great. I mean, the amount of power and the fear, soon as the Doctor realises that it was one of these beings, the amount of fear he portrays, great, I nearly said wonderful again, the great acting by Ncuti.
You never hide!
I can't fight this thing.
Truly spectacular. But I'm going off a tangent. I'm not even gone on any of the story. So it starts with the Maestro being summoned by the Devil's Cord, and the Maestro, after being summoned by, I think it was in the 20s, I believe, I didn't write that down in my notes, that once the Maestro was summoned, they stole the music from the heart of the composer who summoned Maestro. And in doing so was then able to eat the music. Literally, just have it, kind of create it into music in a physical form, and being able to ingest it in a way to give them power. So then, after that, having to have decades and decades of this happening, by the time the Doctor and Ruby arrive in the 60s, I believe it was 63, to attempt to witness the Beatles recording their first album, just so they can see that snippet of history in a fun era. When they arrived, they quickly figured out that things weren't quite right, in the fact that music doesn't really exist. Any kind of creative music doesn't exist anyway. I mean, when they went into the music studios, which was still standing, music was dull. It was boring. There wasn't any soul in it anymore. So they went and interviewed the Beatles after they, in the kind of lunch hall, or having tea break or whatever. And they realised that it's there, in them. But the moment that they started to hum a good tune, sing a little bit of a interesting song that they have bubbling away inside them, it summons the maestro. Not fully at this kind of time, but just enough to pique the Doctor's interest, so they took a piano to the roof where they thought it might be a little bit safer. And here they have Ruby play the piano, and in doing so, quite a beautiful piece. It's really quite nice. And then it does fully summon Maestro, and in doing so, crawling out of the piano. Actually, as they do so, they have the giggle. If you remember from the, what was it? No, not the Christmas special, the specials before that with David Tennant, the first showing of Shooty against the toy maker. Tennant in that heard the giggle. Now, so that was again, as soon as he heard that, he knew it was a link to the toy maker and the Pantheon. He knew he had to run, keep Ruby safe at whatever the cost. Whilst they were hiding, he kind of figured out that it's about sound and music, and that's the power that this being has, for lack of a better word. So he was able to use his sonic screwdriver to completely, I'd say, create an anti-sound field. So then, it's a really great scene where there was no sound at all, even the background music gone, and then Maestro, being a being of great and near limitless power, able to break through this technological trap that the Doctor has put them in. Well, as soon as they've done that, though, one of the local neighbours to that had listened in on Ruby's beautiful piano playing has been inspired to play some music of their own, and that's lured the Maestro away to eat their music and leave them an empty shell on the floor. But that did allow the Doctor and Ruby to escape for now. And then after this, they had, I'm fast forwarding a little bit because I don't want to go through every little step of it all, but they had a great big showdown where they realised there had to be, if there was a chord that summoned the Maestro, there would be a series of notes or chords where they would be able to banish the Maestro once again. Now, Maestro knew the Doctor wasn't up for it. He wasn't the musical genius that, yes, he's a genius, musical genius, not so much. But he nearly got it. He was nearly there and failed. And when it looked as though they were on the verge of defeat, then John Lennon steps in with, forgive me, I forgot his name, Paul McCartney. I'm terrible with names. Step in to the piano they were about to banish the maestro on and complete the chord, and successfully banish maestro, bringing back music to everyone. Now, I've assumed at this point that the banishing of maestro retroactively kind of restored music throughout time, because that's going to be a massive change in the course of history if that a good 4 decades worth of no music. So, but in doing so, there was this really quite, I mean, let's face it, it was camp, but it was flamboyant. It was amazing song at the end, which was that it always ends with a twist. Now, it does always end with a twist. So each episode will have a twist. Now, the actress called Susan Twist. And this episode, just like in Space Babies, she was in this one as well. In the tea hall, just before they interrogated, whichever, the Beatles. She was there handing out tea. The Doctor turned away just at the moment that she showed her face to Ruby and was giving her tea and talking to her. And every time, it's always when the Doctor turns away, the Doctor's not seeing them. I'm assuming this is because the Doctor would recognise her if he did see her. And going back to the point of just before, while they were waiting for the piano to go up onto the roof for Ruby's piano playing, the Doctor and Ruby had a little bit of a moment, a conversation, where they discussed what happened to the other Time Lords. And also the fact that at this moment in history, he's currently living with his granddaughter Susan. And they also mentioned that he wasn't 100% certain as to whether Susan had actually died. It was assumed that she died with the genocide of the Time Lords. And along with seeing a billboard on there, which was a direct quote from Susan from the very first Hartnell episode back in the 60s. So another link to Susan, which makes me think, is this mysterious? Is that Susan? Possibly. It's yet again, it's a slow burner. We're going to have to be keeping up on these theories regularly. Well, that's my current running one. Now, the Pantheon. Now, when during this showdown at the end, the Maestro had Ruby, captured her, strung her up, was about to take all the music from her heart, being the last human currently alive with music still left in her heart. But when they tried to take that music, they couldn't. And because of a certain power which resides within Ruby. And they described this as being because the eldest of the Pantheon was there at her birth, or at least not necessarily at her birth, but there in the church on Ruby Road. And that is interesting. Makes me think, is Ruby another child of the Pantheon. Bit of a stretch, maybe. But again, if they were there at the church in Ruby Road, was the eldest of the Pantheon, was that Ruby's mother? Again, we're only getting snippets of information, not quite enough to formulate a full theory, only ideas. Upon banishing the maestro, they did say, just before being dragged back inside the piano from whence they came, they did say, the one who waits is coming, or will be here soon, or whichever the exact wording escaped me. But the point remains that they mentioned the one who waits. It didn't have a direct link to the eldest of the Pantheon. It's possibly linked to that, or is the one who waits the mysterious neighbour? I doubt that at this point, because it seems like it's building up to the one who waits being the big climax of this series, and we know that that's going to be a bit of a slow burner, so I doubt that they're linked to the one who waits and the neighbour. I don't think that's going to be the case. But maybe a link to Ruby in some way, almost certainly, I would imagine. What that form that's going to take, only Russell T would be able to tell you at this point. Well, I suppose some of the actors will as well, but still, we're only here to theorise and guess. All in all, it was a truly amazing episode. The writing was brilliant, acting spectacular from everyone involved. Excellent cameos. Some of the other cameos I've not even mentioned. Whilst Ruby was playing, one of the neighbours nearby who was listening to it was, maybe we get this name right, June Hudson, who was the one of the designer of the scarf, the famous scarf, the Doctor Who scarf from Baker's era, which, that's a wonderful little cameo, and bless her, I'm glad she was in it. Also, there was Murray Gold. In the big sing-song at the end on the piano was Murray Gold, which I'm really glad they managed to give him a cameo in it, because the score throughout both of these episodes so far, but particularly this second one, The Devil's Chord, the score throughout was beautiful. It was epic when it needed to be. If you, because I've rewatched it again and just paid a pure attention to the music, and it, masterpiece. Murray Gold, we love you. I'm so glad you're back doing the score, because it is perfect. And all in all, I love the way the series is going. I love where it's at. I love the writing, the subtle nuances of how they're dropping hints here and there of the grand scheme of things, whilst not taking away from the story of the episode. It's grand, it's scary in times, also wonderfully camp, and it's so very Doctor Who, and I love it dearly, and I cannot wait for more. But this next time round, I promise you I will get my review of the next episode out a lot quicker than we have this time. So give us a like, a subscribe, and catch up with me next time for my next thoughts on Doctor Who. Take care.